Welcome to the Week 15 edition of Johnny's Intangibles. I'm Collin Wilson, and joining me this week and every week is Johnny Manziel to talk about the latest in college football from last week, conference championship weekend. A big one, Johnny. Ashton Jeanty tried to make a statement, led Boise State to the Mountain West Conference Championship, ending the season with more than 2,400 yards on the ground. Elsewhere, Tez Johnson, completely healthy in the slot for Oregon, and Gunnar Stockton just saving the Georgia offense. But, Johnny, who is your MVP of conference championship weekend?
And Jeanty had such an impressive performance this week. This guy played his absolute butt off this week. I think he tried everything in his power to be able to put himself in front of the eyes of as many voters as he could before the end of the season. I think if you look back at the season, just an unbelievable performance from him. Uh, only really one or two times this year he even rushed for anywhere near 100 yards. I think his lowest all year is 128 yards. So, absolute workhorse of a season for him, week in and week out. Giving it to him again in this conference championship week, he did all he could with another 200-yard performance. Try and make some type of lasting memory in Heisman voters going into next week.
Yeah, you and I are both Heisman voters, and I know at least one Heisman voter did maybe have flipped his vote to Jeanty. So it should be interesting to see what we get this weekend coming up. Now, speaking of Boise State, they are going to get a bye in the college football playoff. The playoff bracket is finalized. We have to get right to the big spot. What did the committee get it right with two-loss SMU and leaving out three-loss Alabama?
I think just looking at how SMU played against Clemson in that game, once it got down to being close like that and it got to be really, really competitive, I think they did. I think obviously everybody sitting in wanting to look at Alabama maybe getting in. It's tough to put an Alabama team in there who lost to a team like Oklahoma, and some of the losses they just had throughout the season are just going to come back to bite them. And when you look at the way, SMU played in that game, they had, a real good chance to go in there and still win that game. Comes up short. I think them getting in is probably pretty warranted with how they played in conference championship weekend.
Yeah, and they're going to move on and face Penn State. And frankly, SMU is built to run on the ground. I think it's a great matchup. But out of SMU, Penn State, Clemson, Texas, Tennessee going to Ohio State, and Indiana at Notre Dame, what is the round one matchup that you're looking forward to most?
I think Tennessee Ohio State's the game I'm probably looking forward to the most to watch and see how this plays out. Obviously Ohio State coming with a little bit limping in towards the end of the season with how they played in that last game. Tennessee probably had some time to be able to get healthy a little bit. I think this is going to be a matchup that'll be really, really good in round one.
Yeah, and we mentioned which one you're looking forward to most. What about having an upset? Because personally, I think the Mustangs are live against Penn State, but out of Clemson, Tennessee, SMU, and Indiana, which underdog do you think has the best shot going on the road in the playoff?
I would probably think Indiana, the way their offense is, the way they're built offensively to be able to try and go score. I think, against a Notre Dame team, it's obviously really good on defense, but I think I like Signetti and that team to be able to be prepared going into this and be able to make some magic happen. I know Marcus Freeman already speaking highly about Signetti and how that team is. I don't think Notre Dame's going to overlook them. I think it is a matchup that could be really, really close in the round one games.
Yeah, Signetti in the playoff is going to be a jolt for college football. Now, speaking of bowls, before we move on and talk about other things, Texas A&M is headed to Las Vegas to play USC. What are your initial thoughts? Not a pick, but what's your initial thoughts of what's going to happen inside of Allegiant Stadium?
I think this is obviously another chance for Marcel Reed to be able to go out and showcase his ability. I think he needs to continue to take a next step and obviously give A&M fans some hope of going into next season that this is going to be the guy and this is going to be his team. Obviously, with Connor Wigman going into the portal, it very much is that. So, I think we need to see a little bit more offensive fireworks. I think this is another chance for Colin Klein to go out and showcase his ability of being the play caller for this team moving forward.
Yeah, definitely the start of the 2025 season for Texas A&M coming up in the Vegas Bowl. But to go back and talk about the SEC championship game, this is where we're going to have our film review of the week. Gunnar Stockton comes in for a hurt Carson Beck and provides a spark for the offense for the Bulldogs. He had 26 rushing yards in the game and the biggest pop of the weekend, almost getting his head taken off. But that play is what set up the game-winning touchdown for the Bulldogs. Johnny, how do you rate this jaw-knocking, knee-bending jolt that set up the game winner for Georgia?
I mean, it's really just him taking off, trying to get them in a position to be able to get this ball in the end zone in such a critical, huge, point of the game. Obviously, has haven't seen him a lot this season, so to come into a situation like this and take one for the team, and set them up, that's exactly what he did because he got absolutely rocked on this play. But at the end of it, you get into the end zone on the next play, you win the SEC championship. Mission accomplished for Georgia.
So we have to talk about Texas and their usage of Arch Manning. Johnny, you and I talked weeks ago when Georgia played that Arch coming in was a little strange, an interesting decision. Well, it turns out 9 turnover-worthy plays is what Quinn Ewers has recorded against Georgia in 2 games this year. Is Sark going to regret not calling on Arch Manning in this SEC championship game, or do we where do we think is the path for Arch Manning in this playoff?
I think they're going to have to continue to find ways to work him into the offense a little bit. We saw it in the A&M game on a fourth down. He takes off and goes and makes a play with his legs. And I think that's where Sark is right now, with obviously using him for some packages to be able to use his ability as a runner. I don't know if they were going to regret it, but they definitely have a good quarterback on their bench, and they're definitely being loyal to Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, Sark has made it very clear that Quinn Ewers is his quarterback that's going to lead into the national championship game, and we should expect Manning to come in and get some RPO plays throughout the playoff. But Johnny, big question: what happens if Quinn Ewers doesn't get the NFL draft grade and he returns to the Longhorns? Do you see this being a two-quarterback system next year?
I think something would obviously have to change. I don't see these guys coming back and redoing this scenario again for a whole nother season. So that'll be something very, very interesting to look out for if Quinn Ewers decides to stay another year at Texas. It could very well be Arch Manning time there by then.
So switching over to college game day, listen, Timothy Chalamet came out and was the guest picker this week. You were also a guest picker. Nick Saban's wife was a guest picker. It's an elite cast that they had this year. But Chalamet made me sweat for my own job. Seemed to know everything about the MAC championship and all of these other games. Johnny, if you could pick, I found a TikTok out there of you mentioning that Tom Holland would be a great person to play you in a movie. Did Timothy Chalamet's performance on College Game Day make you reconsider and want him to play you in a movie?
I don't think it made me reconsider, but it was nice to see a guy go up there and be able to talk some ball like any other analyst up there. So the guy definitely knew what he was talking about. He had some good insight on the games. I think he did a great job. So it was fun to watch. And obviously, I didn't really expect it going into it, but man, what a guy knows his stuff.
He was pretty good, but although we think McConaughey, a Texas guy, might have given him a little bit of info there on those picks. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Johnny's Intangibles. We'll be back later to discuss more college football here at BBOC.